Thank you very much for your praising words. And I think I have talked already quite a lot. What I can say is I'm very glad that my former supervisor, Bas Verschuren, is also in this meeting online. So he might also add some of the recent developments, especially on this new forest project in forest and in forest spirituality in Eastern Europe. And well, here and there, I think I'm rather interested in how this presentation is linked in with your present discussions in this seminar. And I haven't been able to follow them, but maybe you have a lot of questions about it. So please, I'm ready to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. And then I will address to our auditorium and let ask them questions. Please come to.
Hello, my name is Ruta, and first of all, I'm very grateful for your lecture. It was really, really very impressive and inspiring. And I have a question, and what was very interesting is that all of these dimensions, they can overlap, but at the same time, some of the practices might even be harmful. So my question is, and I would like to give an example. In Lithuania, it's not actually a forest, more a park. We have a place near Palanga by the seaside. It's called Olando Kepurė, and it became a very popular place for people to leave human ashes as a part of the funeral ceremony. And for other visitors of that place, it became disturbing. They might feel even somehow disgusted because they do not like to have this type of findings when they visit a place. And there might be also perhaps other examples. So my question would be, what would be your advice or general principles for a wise regulation, how to regulate when we talk about the government or the private forests, how to regulate to make sure that all these different needs of these different dimensions, to make sure that these needs are met, but at the same time to make sure that there are no harm for one or other part of society. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I recognize that problem because it also occurs in the Netherlands. And there are two things I would like to advise, if possible. Then that is that the managers or the owners of the area have a very good insight in what are the feelings of the people and what groups can be distinguished. There are always different stakeholders with different interests and different insights. Sometimes problems can be solved by a spatial zoning of areas. That's done in Holland not only for ash disposal, but also for other things like what I mentioned, people doing sports with a lot of noise and movement, and they sometimes disturb the people who would like to sit still and do yoga. But so that's one aspect. A manager's aspect is that how much is the contamination of the soil by alien objects. Well, ashes is one case in point, but the materials of the urns can be a case in point, or flowers or other things that are not indigenous to the area. And sometimes many owners are more strict. They don't want anything unnatural in the area, and sometimes owners are give some allowance for organic components, for instance, and so. But so zoning and allowing space for let's say the need for people to have some to have to relate with nature in a way that they leave their deceased loved ones there. That is also a point in case. So, yeah. And then, of course, be very open about the process. That is another thing. Publish what you do. It depends also on the space you have, of course. Is that a kind of answer?
Thank you. Maybe others? We can take. Okay.
Hello, thank you for very deep and interesting presentation. I have two questions. The first one, it would be... The first question would be, how popular is forest spirituality in your country? And what would be your suggestions as first step for our country if we want to have this forest spirituality deeper in our country?
Well, I see that there is, for a long time, there has been a rise in spirituality in general in the country. But until, 10 years ago, the trend was upwards, and then it was sort of flattened out. There are many people who have some search for spirituality, but it's not very specific. And forest spirituality is, let's say, there is some very vague, widespread interest in forests, and what I mentioned, you can see that in an enormous proliferation of books and articles and news items about forests and trees. But that is supported by not only very deep spirituality, but a vague kind of emotions and so. There is, for instance, there's the selection of tree of the year, and which is very popular. People can send online, nominate some trees and so on. That is a big contest. Then there is, obvious cases when trees are felled. I mentioned that, and then that is a kind of emotions that resonate not only with deep spirituality, that trees are living beings, but also that the concern for the loss of nature in general and the resonation of loss of nature in other parts of the world. So and there's so there's a variety of emotions and spiritual feelings that sort of make an undercurrent for an upsurge in interest in trees, that materializes in trees and forests in general. Yeah, so I see it is still rising in popularity. How far that will go and how far it is a hype, which is also, may also dwindle away, that depends to be seen.
Thank you very much. And the second one, you mentioned sacred forest, and we had sacred forest here in Lithuania long time ago. What do you think? Is it possible to restore somehow sacred forest in our times?
I'm glad to hear that the sacred forest as a category is existing in Lithuania. In Netherlands, it does not exist as a formal category or whatever. But what you can see is that this student initiative I mentioned, that the forest that owns itself, that is in a sense a kind of sacred forest. There's kind of it's screened off by symbols, and it is a kind of taboo area to enter, and people who have established these forests have a very deep feeling for it, and really consider the forest as living, maybe perceive beings, supernatural beings in it. That may or maybe not, but so they have elements of a sacred forest, and that is, well, I mean, it's not massively on the rise, but there are, there is a growing number of them, about, I think, I guess a kind of 10 or so. That's growing.
Thank you. Vykintas.
Hello. Thank you for inspiring presentation. I'm wondering about the spiritual practices. We have seen so many of them here in your presentation on your slides. So great variety of different religions, of different origins. And my question would be how manage so different and also so, it seems, eclectic view of them. And my question would be, who is creating this variety? Are these people, let's say, Dutch, local, or are they outlanders, immigrants from India or other regions? Who is, let's say, responsible for what is happening in your forests? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. It's very interesting. When we talk about the Dutch public, it is mostly people who are originating from Holland and have a history and their roots in the areas where the forests are situated. However, there are interesting cases of people from Suriname who practicing spiritual healing, and they call it Winti, which is using objects from the forest to heal people, and with all kind of rituals and processes and so on. And a long time ago, I met one of these doctors. They are also sort of medical doctors or alternative circuit of medication, and they, for instance, they are very much they can heal people psychologically by trances and dances and so on. But they do get their materials from the forest, and there are also some inspiration from the forest. So they go to the forest in Amsterdam, take equivalents of what they know from Suriname forests, and they take them from like branches and so on. That is allowed because that's not harmful. So that is a case where they can practice their and modified, adapted their traditional traditions to the Dutch situation. Yeah, another case in point is ayahuasca rituals. Ayahuasca is this transforming drink from which originates from Peru and other countries in Latin America. It is imported in Holland, and it is classified as a drug, so it's not. It can't be used freely, but it is allowed in one sect, which is also situated in Amsterdam, where they are allowed to use it for the religious purposes. But also there is, and it is also tolerated by people who have therapeutic use of these drugs. And sometimes I know people who organize weekends in the forest outside, where people stay outside and use it. It's not addicting, so it's but it is it gives very profound experiences. And even I had a student who was shaman himself and used this drug and did his master's thesis on the effect of shamanic initiation and how that affected people's behavior. Because that, and he found, yes, people were adapting their lifestyle after being initiated as an ayahuasca shamanic person. So that's interesting, but they are fringe. That is not common. You have to look for it. They're but they happen, and they're tolerated.
Thank you, Ruta.
Dear Catharina, I have a general question. You mentioned multifunctional use of forests. So can you explain a little bit in details? Is it allowed intensive use of forest in the same area, in these sacred forests, or in forests which are important for protection of nature values, biodiversity, landscape, and others? What does it mean in your country?
Thank you for this question. We but a long time ago, the State Forest Service and the government made plans for increasing the timber production of forest by expanding the forest area. That was but the latest plan was in 1984, and after that, the policy changed into conservation, an emphasis on conservation. So that means that there were hardly any pure production forests anymore in Holland. Mostly the forests were there for nature and or mixed nature conservation and production, and that means that there is a very slight harvest in the nature for conservation forests. But it is, and the reason is that we have an enormous recreation pressure. People, very often go to forests and walk, and so, and that is also very important to have a constituency that supports the maintenance of forests and the laws that say that forests what are there have to remain forests. That is also a law in Holland. But we have, nevertheless, of course, we have also timber production, and then there has been a question: how do you harvest? And can that be clear felling, or is that selective felling, like pro silva systems or natural regeneration? And well, there has been quite a debate about that. Especially when policy changed in 2010, and the budget were severely cut of all the forest managing organizations, and they had to cut much more timber than planned, and that also raised a lot of protests from society. But they. In the end, what the actual management, when there is cutting, and when they can do clear cut, but not with cutting areas not higher than half a hectare, or they can do selective felling, and that is gaining ground at the moment in various kinds of systems. So what I said, 88.5% of the Dutch consumption is coming from Dutch forests. Maybe some is exported, but it's not very much. And most of our timber is imported. So there's lots of room for nature management and leaving forests alone. Is that and it is also a spatial question, of course. Forest managers have to zone off their areas always.
I would like to expand this topic and to say that in Lithuania we have more than 30% afforestation, but we have a big movement because of forest activism. I mean, because 80% of our forests are dedicated to timber and only small amount of Lithuanian forests are recreational use or protected, deep protection. So in 2019, big protests arise in Lithuania, seeking for a change of forestry practices, and these movements they made even some public actions up till the broad discussions which started in 2021 called National Agreement on Forest Future, seeking that a more multi-purpose forest will be. Up till now, this agreement was not succeeded, but it was a movement in which a lot of groups of society have part in, starting from foresters up till the activists, those who are involved in such research on forests, on nature protection, social groups of very different variety. Among them was a big part of this today our meeting community of indigenous culture, and 7 groups made alliance on which value-driven position was stated, and in this 7 groups was indigenous cultural people, which are advocating on social and cultural values and functions of forests. It was, for example, landscape people, geographers who are involved into the general understanding of ecological stability of area. It was nature protection persons who were involved in the species protection more deeply in the forests, and others too, which are we call the non-timber groups. Non-timber groups, and this movement of the 7 groups evolved into the we call it movement of forests, and we have now alliance in which more than 40 organizations have part in. We call it Forest Alliance, and for example, tomorrow will be meeting of this Forest Alliance. Other things which I would like to refer about Lithuanian, it was the part of this movement on forests, non-timber forest use. I mean, in 2024, forest and human relation was listed in the list of intangible cultural values of national importance in Lithuania. And Lithuania is only the 2nd country after the Finland which listed this topic as our intangible value. So we have big plans, maybe I can say about spiritual values, but I can say from this community, I would argue, do we force all spiritual practices in the forests, which will help, for example, for forests survival, for flourishing of forests, for more livable forests, or more to take focus on our indigenous culture, and to think what is relation between these new spiritual practices and our own. Maybe someone from auditoria would like to stress that more. So we invite Catharina to come to Lithuania, and I can see that we can find a lot of our practices in your system, and it would be very interesting how we will find out what are our actions in that dimensions you listed. What else I would like to ask you more? I would like to say that these rights for nature, are they active in Netherlands? Because Netherlands is very urbanized area, and it is very difficult to find out something very natural by my eye, more in British Columbia or other more natural sites. It is, I can say these objects are really powerful, but in urbanized area, they so much transformed that it is very difficult to find out these objects like strong in spirit. I mean, what is your point of view?
Yes. Of course. Thank you for explaining the situation in Lithuania in the first place. The Netherlands came from a very urbanized tradition, and it is still very strong and very much growing or putting pressure on the forest at the moment. We have this big housing problem. Some parties say that is all the cause of immigrants that come, which is not true. But there is it is used as there are lots of excuses to claim parts of space on forests. So that is one thing. And on the other hand, yes, there is what I said. There is kind of raising consciousness that forest is more than timber, or even more than ecology, but also it is spiritual, and let's say the whole worldview and the whole ontology is sometimes changing in among certain groups that forests have their own rights, and there are beings like any other living being. Okay. In complex situations, you will never be able to solve all conflicts. In Holland, the forest managers have told me that they have learned to, when it comes to practical situations like tree felling for certain purposes, for instance, clearing more land for biodiversity purposes, that can be, that is a point in case. Then they can explain to the people and take people to the forest who are concerned, then and explain the situation. And sometimes there can be an understanding. In other cases, there is the controversy continues between ecologists mostly and people who like to keep some trees. But it is, there's a knowledge problem. What is forest and what is how does the ecology work in a certain area? That's one thing that is factual and that can be explained without much difficulty. But then the spiritual insights are much more difficult to explain, like seeing forest and other its inhabitants as human as beings who have their own rights. We can get inspiration from British Columbia. I also did part of my research there because I found management plans which were very open about spiritual matters. So that can also be an inspiration perhaps for Lithuania. I would love to come to your country at some point when it is practical and discuss this more in depth and learn. I think we can learn a lot from Lithuania, and perhaps we can contribute also a little bit to the discussions there. Is that
Also-
some answer?
Thank you. I would like to announce some questions which arise in our chat. Akvilė Sadauskienė wrote, thank you for tremendous work at presentation. I am the daughter of forester who has spent 40 years in the forest, so I fully understand that forest spirituality is even known as official term used by foresters, forest education. But could you please explain where all that spirituality which you presented to us in its impressive diverse expressions originates from in the Netherlands? Is it due to the small size of the country and dense population?
Yeah, I will be brief because also my colleague Bas Verschuren would perhaps explain also a little bit about the origins of the concern. This has been there has been a long living concern among the public, not about the Dutch forest so much, but about the tropical rainforest. We even had a policy paper on the tropical rainforest in 1991, and yeah, that was the time that the public was more open, went to travel, got all this news about the forest, the global effects of forests, and the dwindling Amazon, etc., etc. So that I think that is part of the roots of this spiritual forest spirituality as we know it now. And then of course people said, well, what happens in our country? And then they went to look and saw large timber felling and timbers, storms, also destruction of forests by storms, and etc. And they became more and more involved. And I think that is one of the answers I can give.
Maybe someone else would like to ask a question. If no, I would announce that Bas Verschuren wrote to us. Catharina was referring to a new project we are developing on forest spirituality in Eastern Europe that we are developing. We now have a PhD candidate who just started on the project, who is also in this call, Ola Gabrowski. I'd be happy to say a few words if that is of interest. But please first the presentation. So, Bas or Ola, do you want to interrupt and say the words?
Yes, sure. If we've arrived at that moment, hello everybody, and thank you for having all these interesting speakers lined up and talking about spirituality. Just 1 second. Yeah, sorry, doing something about the background noise. I'm at home, and there's other things happening at home, like cleaning the house and stuff. I won't bother you with that, but it's a super interesting topic, obviously, that we have in our department at the Forest and Nature Conservation Group been working at for some time. Catharina has really been the first person to look at forest spirituality very precisely. And that's raised interest with us to continue research on that dimension. And myself and my colleague, also an assistant professor, Agata Kongsel from Poland, were able to get an initiator grant to start researching forest spirituality. And since Agata is from Poland, she suggested we focus on the eastern side of Europe rather than the western side, where there's already been quite a bit of research happening on this topic. The idea is to connect with 1, 2, perhaps even 3 different spaces or countries, connect with research communities there and communities of practice to learn more about what forest spirituality can mean. really an exciting project for ourselves as well. As I wrote, we are developing this, so we don't have yet like a very detailed project description. Our idea is that we will look at spirituality as part of the forest, of the daily life with the forest. We're also looking at maybe developing conceptually and theoretically more this field. And that's a bit of an exploration that Ola, who's also on the call and maybe can also say hello to you, will also be working on. Ola, are you there actually? Would you like to come in and say hello? Hopefully, or maybe she's left. And I just promised you a little bit too much. But then I'm certain she will have a moment to introduce her at some point in the future. Maybe it suffices for me to say that I'll be in touch to also explore if we can collaborate with you in Lithuania on this project. So for I don't know how many years now, Vikintas, we've been in touch working on spirituality and sacredness of nature. And this is finally a very concrete opportunity to collaborate. So hoping that in the future we can do that. Maybe there's questions from your side. I take those as well, but otherwise can return to Catharina and your planning, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you, Bas. So, do we have some questions? As we have several minutes left, Catharina, I would like to say that we now are in so-called nature school, which is a project elaborated in our state protected areas survey. This is agency of within our Ministry of Environment, and there are now nine nature schools, which are some places which are together with our visitor centers working on the education about nature, about landscape, about our indigenous culture at the site within the nature, I mean. And this, I would like to ask, maybe you can add some moments about education on forest spirituality that you mentioned in university or in college or at schools, how it happened, and what are your best regards and wishes for this educational field?
Well, I think education is super important. I'm not very much on my an educationist myself, but I see the importance, and I know in Holland, as I mentioned, there are a few institutes that work specifically on forest education. For spirituality, education is not existing. I think it just happens to be an element in the educational programs at most, unless you're in working very, very specific fields like this balancing, which is being done and which works totally with energies, vital energies, and so. But that is something you have to. You have to turn the button to accept what happens there, and it's not really very highly accepted in conventional science. But it exists, and lots of people sort of accept it. But for the general nature education, there's this, what I said, there is this big program Natuurwijs, which was helping to schools and forestry organizations to have excursions with children in nature, etc. Yeah, I must say there is one problem, if you see, or an issue I see, and that is that education is important, considered important, even a target in policies and planning. But it is very broad. It's just not very much focused on the content of the education. As long as children experience forests and have a nice time and it is fun and it's feel good, then it's fine. But that is a different thing from getting connectedness with nature. And that's an area of research that also a friend of us and also is specializing in, Martin Zijlstra. He's now living in Australia, and he has done a lot of work on how people connect with nature and what are the benefits of that. So, and that it has been proven that if people really connect, and that can be through these ayahuasca sessions or through spiritual insights, flashes, whatever, then that is also enhancing their behavior towards to really adopt nature-friendly lifestyles, etc. So we have to be careful what actually you want to promote, and it's interesting. Yeah.
Vegan.
Yeah, since we have some minutes left, I would back to spiritual practices. My question would be how specific and how much characteristic are these spiritual practices of forests. Perhaps the same is happening on seashore, on somewhere on wetlands in Netherlands. Now, how forests are exceptional or they are so, let's say, part of very common phenomena.
Yes, well, there has been research on what kind of landscapes the public prefers, and that just not only for spiritual practices but to visit in general. And then forests score the highest, and then followed by seashores, and so it may have to do with the overwhelming dimensions of this type of landscape. Trees are higher than people. You're sort of lost in it somehow, and also, well, water in Holland, at least, of course, that the sea has been always present as a very powerful element of nature, and so so that might explain the preferences. But there is also preference for wide landscapes with lots of views. Sand dunes with the dynamics of sand, and also, well, people do go on holidays to other countries with mountains. Mountains are very, of course, are also, let's say, have this grandeur. So I think that's an element. In Holland, forests are chosen also because they are sometimes close. This urban, especially in urban areas, there's a lot of little green, but also green parks, green patches of forest, estates, small areas with a lot of trees and things. So, so forests and people like also to go to areas which are lonely, silent. So that can also be moors, bogs, and when they're accessible in the higher areas. So yes, forests are quite important.
So I think we all want to thank you once again, Catharina, and wish you good luck in your further investigation.
Thank you also.
Thank you. apie tai, ką mes girdėjom ir kiek čia mums svarbu, nes vis tiek manau, kad kalba šiek tiek mus siaurina, trukdo taip gražiai išsireikšti, kaip norėtume.
Kelias minutės, tai...
Aš manau, kad kažkaip aš labai norėčiau, kadangi turiu valdžią, noriu kažko lietuviško, kad baigtume, nes tai svarbi tema, mano man. Tai gerai, tai dabar va, kaip.
Tai man atrodo, kad, kaip sakyčiau, yra daug ko pasimokyti. Kaip sakyti, tiesiog mums reikia siekti savo tikslų ir mes tą tikrai galėtume padaryti. Man atrodo, akivaizdu ir iš Catharinos ankstesnių darbų ir šiandien buvo tas paminėta. Vis dėlto yra didelis darbas su privačiais miškų savininkais. Tai, ko mes visiškai neturim, visiškai nekreipiam dėmesio į tai arba atskirai nedirbam su jais, tai tenai Nyderlanduose tas pasidalinimas, vis dėlto ten jie turi apie 30% tų miškų. Ir tai, ką girdėjot, tos iniciatyvos ar pavyzdžiui, tos laidojimo miške vietos, tai iš tų dabar 24 vietų dauguma yra privačių savininkų. Ir tai akivaizdu, kad privatus savininkas yra daug lankstesnis, jisai, aišku, turi paisyti taisyklių, bet jisai neturi ten kažkokių politinių angažavimusi. Ir tai šiandien Lietuvoje pusę mūsų miškų valdo privatų savininkai. Vidutinis privataus savininko valdomas sklypas yra, pasakys Rūta, ten 3 hektarai. Tai reiškia, kad tų savininkų yra, ir čia tarp mūsų sėdinčių yra savininkų. Pakelkit rankas, kas turit miško savo. Jūs įsivaizduojat. Tai net ir mūsų tarpe mes galim daryti didelį tokį proveržį, rodydami pavyzdį, sektiną ir galvodami apie tai, kaip keisti politiką. Nes dabar taip išeina, kad girių spiečius vis dėlto daugiausiai yra nukreiptas į valdžią, tai yra labai gerai daryti įtaką, reiškia, siekti tenai teisės aktų priėmimo arba jų pakeitimo, bet ta privačių savininkų mums užkerta ten žmonės, kurių pavardės mes žinom, lobistai, kurie dirba su pramonė ir jie mums tarsi pastato kliūtį, kuri draustų ar neleistų, bet mums niekas nedraudžia ieškoti tų privačių miškų savininkų ir su jais kalbėtis, susirinkti, sakykime, į seminarą su pirmais ten 30 ar 60 tų žmonių ir sakyti, kaip jums gauti pajamų ar tos pridėtinės vertės iš jūsų valdomų miškų, nekertant jų, tokia paprasčiausių švietimų užsiimti. Daugelis jų neįsivaizduoja, nežino. Kita vertus, jeigu jie patys nenori tos iniciatyvos ar neturi laiko, taigi jie gali nuomoti, pagal panaudos sutartį. Jie gali įsileisti tos žmonės, kurie norėtų to miško, bet jie neturi jo. Tai tada išeitų, kad tas savininkas nekirsdamas miško, jis vis dėlto gautų naudą. Ir tai tampa akivaizdu, kad tie keliai, mano nuomonė, mums labai sunku pasukti tą dažnai ant traukinį, ant bėgių, bet turiu omeny mūsų politinę valdžią, betgi mes turim tą pusę mūsų miškų savininkų, kurie galėtų tapti tokiais sąjungininkais ir man atrodo, kad čia yra tik tai, aišku, ne tik tai, bet švietimo klausimas, kad tai yra tokios valios ir tam tikro tokios palankios situacijos modeliavimo klausimas. Tai, mano toksai įspūdis, žinant, ir šiandien prisiminus, kaip yra ten Nyderlanduose, matėt skaičius. Šalis perpus mažesnė negu Lietuva ir gyvena 18 milijonų žmonių. Tai tankis yra beprotiškas, dar tų miškų iš kažkur tai ten dar yra, žinai. Ten, žodžiu, ta situacija, nu, žodžiu, ten, aišku, ir pati visuomenė yra įsitraukusi tai, bet kita vertus, jeigu ten, pavyzdžiui, imtume skaičiuot, tai ta visuomenė, nu, tokia labai jos įdomios šaknis, ne, yra mišri, bet jie yra ir ta, žinai, patyrus tą buržuą visą tą raidą ir jie yra va tie tokie, nu, liuteronai, kurie labai tokie racionalūs, labai, nu, viskas, žinai, tvarkoj. Jie nuo seno ir istoriškai yra medžiotojai. Tas irgi labai nugriauna tą tokį, nu, darnų santykį su mišku, nes ten medžioti, nu, yra, nu, ten normalu. Jei trūksta miško, važiuoja į Vokietiją, važiuoja į Rytų Europą, medžioti jiem yra, nu, ten nuo viduramžių, ten, žodžiu, įprasta. Tai nežiūrint to, vis tiek ten išlieka erdvės, va, ir matom, nu, ir tas mano paskutinis klausimas. Ir vis dėlto miškas net nugali jūros pakrantę, įsivaizduojat. Tai, kas mums atrodo, nu, tikrai prie jūros yra tas potyris, tas visas. Nu,
Pasakysiu, kodėl, nes Olandijoje jūra nėra deficitas. Iš tikrųjų yra daugybė salų ir pas mus, tai yra, vien žodžiu, visos vietos, kurios yra šventos, jos yra išskirtinės, tai yra vienetiniai dalykai, net ir, sakysim, pačios seniausios, kai vakar filmą žiūrėjome, Miglų šalis ir, vien žodžiu, ta paskutinė šventvietė, kur iš upės, vien žodžiu, tokios didžiulės akmeninės atodangos išteka šaltinis, tai nėra daugybė tokių vietų, tai yra retenybės iš tikrųjų, ir tos retenybės ir tampa šventom vietom, nes, nu, pas mus miškų daugiau. Todėl mums sudėtinga pasakyti, kuri ten ta miškų dalis, reikia rasti juose tas šventvietės, ar ne? O Olandijoje miškų yra labai mažai, tai yra deficitinė vieta. Sakyčiau, dėl to nugali jūra, nes jos tiesiog yra daugiau. Na, sakysim, mano čia tokia interpretacija geografinė. Gal dar kas nori? Prašau.
Aš norėčiau trumpai pridurti, čia kadangi apie švietimą ir privačių savininkų švietimą buvo kalba. Catharina kalbėjo apie tai ir taip pat esam prieš metus su Vykintu, kai bendravom su Catharina ir su Basu ir kalbėjom apie galimus galbūt projektus, jie sakė, jeigu jūs įsitrauksit į kažkokį bendrą projektą su mumis, mes norėtume čia atvažiuoti ir dirbti su miškininkais. Tai mums buvo visiškai tas netikėta, bet kad tas švietimas jis yra ne šiaip bendrai, apskritai visuomenės ar vaikų, bet tiesiog dirbti su tais, kurie jau yra miške ir jiems suteikti žinių, atverti tos kontekstus. Tai, na, man buvo labai netikėta, bet tai galbūt perspektyvu.
Taip, aš tai sakyčiau, kad yra labai puikia praktika, kai miškininkai moko miškininkus, mokytojai mokytojus ir iš tikrųjų geriau galbūt net ir priimamos tos žinios iš kitos pusės, bet irgi tavo pačios prieigos žmonių, kad nebūtume mes tie tokie moralizuotojai, nes kai kada gal toks yra pajutimas, bet aš manau, kad iš tikrųjų tarptautiškumas šitoje vietoje būtų labai įdomus ir to labiau, kad ir pati Catharina, jinai dabar mums daug nepapasakoja, bet kai vardinamos tos praktikos, tai jos yra iš viso pasaulio, jos nėra tik tai Olandų, tiesiog Olandijoje daugiau jos turi reprezentacijų. Aš tai norėjau mūsų auditorijos paklausti, kokį jūs jaučiate santykį arba kokią galvojat ateitis tos prigimtinės kultūros pasireiškimų, kuriuos mes norėtume savo alkuose, pavyzdžiui, kaip testinę tradiciją vystyti ir tų naujai ateinančių dvasinių praktikų, kurių, vien žodžiu, mes vakar kalbėjom, kad tas dvasingumas, jisai ateina iš įvairių ir yra vakarų, kaip sakyti, orientalizacija ir rytų westernalizacija, tas globalizmas, kuris išmaišo visas praktikas. Tai gal norėtumėte toje plotmėje pasisakyti kas nors, kaip jūs galvojat, kaip jaučiatės, ką galvojat?
Vakar mums priminė religijos tyrinėtojai, man atrodo, Milda, kalbėdama užsiminė tokį labai žinoma, bet ir sykiu kaip ir nežinoma dalyką, kad senoji lietuvių religija, Romuva, yra lietuvių religija. Ir, na, kai mes dirbome miškų susitarime, mes kalbėjomės apie galimybę galbūt alkų, šventų miškų, ir mums iškilo tas klausimas, na, kuris susisieja su religija, o kam priklauso teisę tos alkos atkurti? Kas yra tie žmonės, kurie yra paveldėtojai? Na, mes suprantam, mes kaip tauta, bet ar, tarkim, ar vyriausybė, ar ne, mūsų išrinkta, ar kas turi įgaliojimus? Ir vakar Eglutė kalbėjo apie tą vyresnybę, vyresniuosius, bet, na, mes nežinom, kas jie būtų, nes, tarkim, Romuva, ji nedalyvavo miškų susitarime iš viso, kas iš tikrųjų labai stebino. Tai, na, sunku pasakyti, neprisijungia. Tai, na, tas klausimas mane iš tikrųjų trikdo. Atsakymo jokio nesiūlau, bet jisai, nu, kažkoks svarbus toks. Kas perima kultūrą, tradiciją, kam jį priklauso kaip ir visiems, kaip tautosaka, tarkim, ar ne? Nėra autorinių teisių, nes priklauso visiems.
Rūta.
Šiaip keliom temom. Ir apie miškininkų mokymą, ir apie šitą, pradėsiu nuo paskutinio. Aš žinokit, net negalvoju, kad juos kas nors apskritai kvietė. Jo, bet yra kitas dalykas, kad kartais susirenka žmonės, kurie, gerai žino vieną pusę, bet jie nežino miškų. Ir jeigu nėra specialistų iš tos pusės, bet nenoriu kalbėti už kitus. Bet dabar pirmiausia, tai dėl miškininkų mokymų. Šiaip tai reikia, visi mes turim mokytis, bet, yra vienas bet. Giedrė sako, kad jie, kitus priima. Priešingai, ne. Šitoje vietoje jie geriausia priima tada, kada sako miškininkai, jų kolegos, aš išgirdau kitaip, bet ir tai, dabar mes, pavyzdžiui, dėl gamtos apsaugos toks Brazaitis ir iš jų pačių, kaip sakoma, terpės, bet jeigu tu atneši visiškai kitokią informaciją, tai, net pasišiaušia ir taip maždaug, ne, jūs esat klaidingai čia mastot ir galvojat. Tai va šitoj vietoj, šiaip aišku, tikrai reikia galvoti, bet reikia surasti tą scenarijų, gal net su jais pačiais, su tais, kurie atviri, kitaip mąstantis ir galima iš tiesų kalbėtis. Tai, nežinau, aišku, yra autoritetai Lietuvoje, kurių galbūt paklausytų, o turbūt nereikia tikėtis, kad jeigu šiandien šnekėsim, rytoj jie visi pasikeis. Dabar dėl alkų. Dėl alkų yra tokia dvejopa situacija. Jeigu mes kalbam apie tuos alkus, kurie buvo istoriškai šventi ir pripažinti, nes ir miškų susitarime taip nuskambėjo, tai jūs juos saugokit. Tai šitoj vietoj turbūt nėra didelių problemų, reikėtų tik tais tos informacijos, nes iš tiesų tie valstybės tarnybose dirbantys ir kurie galėtų tai daryti, jie tikrai neturi pilnos informacijos, bet to ir naujos atsiranda, tai tiesiog reikėtų drąsiai ją atnešti, pateikti, gal net jeigu iš karto nepasiseks, tai kitą kartą pasiseks ir panašiai. Bet ten, kur mes kalbėjom, tada irgi diskutavom nacionalinio miškų susitarimo metu apie naujus alkus, tai va šitoj vietoj ir aš manau, kad Prigimtinės kultūros institutas galėtų išgryninti visgi, kas tai būtų. Nes pavyzdžiui, galima pradėti nuo to, kad galima saugoti kaip gamtos vertybę ir, sakykime, saugomų teritorijų tarnyba turi tam tikrus įgaliojimus ir mes tikrai galėtumėm rasti būdą, bet dabar gali būti tos privačios saugomos vietovės. Ir vėl, Vykintas apeliuoja į tuos, kurie turi mišką ir tikrai tai galima būtų daryti, bet dabar įstatymė irgi yra įrašyta, greitai turėtų atsirasti aprašas, kas tai gali būti. Tai mums, pavyzdžiui, detalizuoti ten dėl biologinės įvairovės išsaugojimo yra paprasta, bet kai mes ateinam iki tos pusės ir kai reikia surašyti kriterijus, tikrai nėra patirties, nežinom. Tai jeigu atneštumėt jūs, kas tai galėtų būti, tai mes galėtumėm būti tie, ne stūmokliai, bet tie Nu, ir iniciatyvos gali imtis ir padėti ir panašiai. Tai vat pirmiausia, žinokit, visada reikia išmokti kalbėtis, ne tik išmokti kalbėtis, tai mes mokam, bet vat surasti tuos kontaktus ir atnešti tą reikiamą informaciją. Paskui jinai keliauja, nes tikrai yra žmonių, kurie nori. Tai vat šitoje vietoje galima pradėti nuo tų privačių saugomų vietovių ir jeigu tai būtų aišku, kas tai yra, tai manau net ir valstybiniuose miškuose to galėtų atsirasti.
Ačiū labai, Rūta. Aš tai norėčiau irgi kažkaip pridėti tas Olandijos labai didelis kiekis miškų, kurias turi nevyriausybinės organizacijos. Tikrai didelis kiekis. Ir aš manau, kad, sakykime, Sengirės pavyzdys, kaip fondas įsigyja žemę ir joje vyksta veikla, kuri atspindi to fondo visas vertybės, tai galbūt, nesu tikra, bet galbūt tai yra kelias, kuriuo galėtų eiti ir prigimtinės kultūros organizacijos, kokios, kaip viskas įmanoma, bet reikia tiesiog svarstyti tokią galimybę. Galbūt pradėti nuo privačių savininkų, nes jie juk irgi taip pat pradėjo, kad kažkas dedikavo savo mišką, kad jisai nebūtų kertamas, kad tai būtų visiškai rūšims pašvesta vieta. Ir tos idėjos, juk jos taip ir vystosi. Tai aš kažkaip labai norėčiau pakviesti galbūt branduolį prigimtinės kultūros instituto bendruomenės, kuri turi mišką, savo žemėse ieškoti vis dėlto alkų ir šventviečių, kurias tikrai tenai gali rasti ir pradėti tokį judesį. Gal dar kas turi kokių minčių? Ar visi nori pietų? Vytautas, prašau.
Taip, tai kadangi prigimtinės kultūros institutas yra tos nacionalinės UNESCO vertybės sąrašo teikėjas ir įsipareigotojas, tai akivaizdu, kad ir visa visuomenė kaip ir lauks tolimesnių žingsnių. Tai matyt, ar tai galėtų būti pačioje organizacijoje tam tikra sekcija būtent miško globotojų, kuri po to plėstų ir įtrauktų platesnę visuomenę. Ir čia labai gera mintis buvo pasakyta apie Romuvą. Ir tai juk iš tikrųjų ta pagadybė ne tik Romuvoje yra, toks yra subtilumas, kad yra ir daugiau įvairių grupių ir jūs galėtumėt įtraukti ir vadinti tai, reiškia tiesiog pasinaudoti tą progą, kad jau Romuva gavus yra, bet idėja yra platesnė ir tuo pačiu įtraukti ir daugiau visokių nevyriausybinių organizacijų kaip skėtinė tokia ir tikrai, reiškia, matyt, galime būti ieškoti įvairesnių būdų, kaip įtraukti tos žmonės ir juos skatinti. Ir nebūtinai vien, kad jie turėtų toj prigimtinės kultūros instituto veikloje dalyvauti, ar ne. Tai čia toks tik pastebėjimas, kad labai norėtųsi, kad tai toliau augtų.
Na, štai kažkaip pradedu matyti mūsų veiduose norą pasivaikščioti, nes labai ilgai sėdėjot, bet tai nereiškia, kad mintys, kurios kyla, neturėtų likti pas jūs užtrauktos. Jas tiesiog pasidalinkit su tuo, ko pietausite ir auginkime tą bendruomenę, kuri turi idėjų ir kurios idėjos gali ir turi būti išplėtotos. Ačiū.